Hello and welcome to History for Weirdos.
We're your hosts, Andrew
and Stephanie,
and we're going to take you on a journey into the strange, obscure, and relentlessly entertaining corners of human history.
Now listen up, friends, because it's about to get weird.
Weirdos, welcome back to another episode of History for Weirdos with your hosts, Stephanie and Andrew at West Coast Creative Studio in Hollywood, California.
That's why our background looks so nice and cozy and professional, and there's no Pericles chewing toys anywhere.
It's so much better, I swear.
This feels so nice. I'm so glad to be here.
I know. I mean, it's always like good to be in studio.
Get out of the apartment.
Yeah, and makes it feel a little bit more professional. Dare say a little bit more weird.
Yeah, in a good way.
In a good way. We're bringing the weird to the weirdos. Okay, well, before we get into your episode this week, which I'm actually really stoked for.
You should be.
Always, right? It should just be on default. But this week, I wanted to give you a little bit of a recommendation. So, before I even give you my recommendation, go buy our merch.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That was a good smooth transition there.
That was so unhinged. Oh my God.
We do have merch.
We do have merch. It will be in our show notes.
It's really fun. You can get several designs on like
Redbubble.
a dozen different products on Redbubble, but it's a little tricky to navigate. So do you mind explaining it?
Yes. So the link that I'll give you, it'll show you all the designs. And so based off the designs you like, you can click that, and then it'll show you like bucket hats, sweatshirts, just like normal hats, coffee mugs even. Notebooks.
Tote bags.
Yes. All of the
things.
above. And you can go ahead and, just buy like whatever strikes your fancy.
Yeah, but when you first go in, it just looks like there's no merch.
Right, it's really
you just
odd.
have to click by design.
Yes.
Which is what we wanted to clarify.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and that'll be in the show notes.
That'll be in the show notes, and also recommendations. So I'm reading a book for the second time, which rarely happens. Usually
you never reread, that's right.
Yeah, I usually don't. But this one, it was so good, I had to. And you know me, I'm a Roman history nerd. That's my thing. And so I'm actually rereading a book on the early portion of the late Roman Republic. So I'm talking about like 146 BC to around like 70 BC roughly. So this is before the rise of Caesar, and like at the very end, you have like the rise of like some names you might be familiar with, like Pompey Magnus or Marcus Licinius Crassus.
Yeah, of course.
And then of course, Sulla.
The blonde-haired tyrant. What's the book?
Oh, yeah, duh. The book's called The Storm Before the Storm by Mike Duncan, who's also the host of the History of Rome podcast, which if you haven't listened to it, that's like an OG history podcast that goes back to like when I was in high school.
Yeah.
So you got to give that a listen.
Who got you to listen to that podcast?
For the second time, it was you. That's true.
For the second time. I don't believe that. I still think it was the first time.
No, I listened to it once before, but I didn't finish it, to be fair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That was the difference.
This
was during the pandemic, right?
Yeah. I started listening to it for the second time, like right when COVID was hitting, or right before.
Andrew was really, really, really into ancient Rome at the time.
Yeah, even more so than I am now.
And I had reached my max on ancient Rome talk. So I was like, you know what you should do? You should listen to this podcast.
And then you just created a monster.
Yeah, I fed the beast.
Yeah.
But it must be a very good book if you're reading it again, because I love to reread. I read books 2, 3, 4 times.
Right.
I read one book like every couple of years. But for you, that's really rare.
Yeah, I usually don't reread. And the reason why is because, like, A, like, I think the time period is fascinating. And B, I mean, he does pull from a bunch of, like, primary sources and kind of weaves together a really good story. And especially, like, this, it's such an interesting time in its own right, but it's often overshadowed by the late Roman Republic, right? Of course, you have, like, the civil wars between the first triumvirate, and then you have, of course, the rise of Augustus and the end of the Republic itself.
Yeah.
So obviously, it's going to overshadow the earlier portion, but it shouldn't.
Can you tell the weirdos what about the book is kind of like spooky?
Oh, yeah. So
You don't have to go off too much
I'm
on
not going
it.
to go off too much, but I'll give you, there's just a lot of parallels between what's happening today and what happened then. And
Yep.
it's a little terrifying, but it's like watching a train wreck. You can't not stop watching.
Yeah. That could be its own podcast, probably.
I know. I really should do.
Yeah, like the parallels between the two.
Yeah, that would be like a special.
You and Mike Duncan.
Oh my God, that'd be so cool.
Let's manifest it.
Manifesting. Okay, well, without further ado.
No, I wanted to give the weirdos an update.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We won, you guys. We got Andrew to watch Pride and Prejudice.
That's right. I forgot about this.
If you don't follow us on Instagram, you should, at History For Weirdos. And it was on there that I shared. I got Andrew to watch Emma, the version with Anya Taylor-Joy.
Emma.
And then I was begging him to watch Pride and Prejudice next. And he's like, I can't do more Jane Austen adaptations. So I went to the weirdos on Instagram, and you all convinced him.
I did.
In our stories to watch it. And you finally watched it, the 2005 adaptation.
Which I feel like that's like the adaptation.
Wow.
I mean,
That's
some
a
weirdos
statement.
might get mad at me for this.
Yeah, the girlies are going to have opinions.
Yeah, they're going to have opinions.
But I think it is.
I mean, it's Keira Knightley.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
a really good adaptation, in my opinion. But as I told you, it's not as book accurate. So I do still want you to watch the older adaptation.
The 95 one?
Yeah.
Okay. I will.
What were your thoughts?
I really liked it. I thought it was a really good story. A bunch of people like going to each other's houses and just kind of like hanging out, you know? It was in a way it's kind of like Seinfeld or Friends. No, I wanted to give a hilariously terrible take and just see what you'd say.
Pride and Prejudice is like Seinfeld.
Except like without like the awkward like I lost my
No.
phone. What am I gonna do?
There's a lot of awkward moments.
Oh, you're right. There kind of are. Oh yeah, the scene where they're kind of just like the picnic scene. That was awkward.
That's Emma.
That's Emma.
Oh my God. What are we going to do with him, you guys?
I just conflated the two. I genuinely thought that was Pride and Prejudice.
If there are more Jane Austen film adaptations that you want Andrew to watch, and we could even give live reactions, maybe we could do a live,
Oh,
or I could record your reactions. Let us know, weirdos. Let us know in the comments.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now, without further ado.
Okay, let me do it.
Okay.
And now, without further ado, Stephanie, what
Mhm.
story do you have for us this week?
This week, we have actually a pretty highly requested subject.
Yes.
I feel like from almost the beginning of the podcast, people have been requesting this person.
I think the first request for this person came, not an exaggeration, years ago.
Years ago. But I had no idea who she was, so I couldn't speak to her.
Right. But now you do.
But now I do. So we are going to be discussing the life of Nellie Bly.
Yes, this is a really good one.
Cheer! Woo! I can hear people cheering in the background.
Excellent.
So Nellie Bly is such a weirdo in the best way. This is a good weirdo, thankfully. Last one I did was Potbelly. He was a bad weirdo.
Like the opposite of good. Yeah, the
He's
exact
like
opposite.
the worst kind of weirdo. Now we have a good one.
Good.
So I'm going to get into her story, okay? So to give you some context, before women in the United States could even vote or open a bank account, we had Nellie Bly faking madness so that she could infiltrate an asylum.
Dude, what a punk rock move. Like straight up. That's such a G move right there.
Yeah, and she was traveling the globe in less than 80 days, and she was even running a manufacturing empire in New York City.
Damn, like I want this life.
Right? She defied basically every rule of her time. And she didn't do it for fame. She didn't really care about like the fame and the notoriety that came with it, but she really cared about exposing injustice and how unfair a lot of things were. So in this episode, we're diving deep into her unbelievable but very true life story. She's got some bold stunts and quite a legacy that she left behind. We're going to learn about Nellie Bly, the woman who made history by refusing to stay in her place.
Excellent. I love that. That's such a like a quintessential like good weirdo mantra.
Exactly.
Not staying in your place. Like don't just just not being stuck in the mud of society.
Exactly. Well, you'll see. That's definitely her.
She sounds like she's like kind of an early investigative reporter.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to be quiet now and I'll let you
We're
talk.
going to get into it. No, you're good. We're going to start with her early life, of course. She wasn't born Nellie Bly. She was actually born Elizabeth Jane Cochran on May 5th, 1864, in a teeny town called Cochran's Mills, Pennsylvania. And yes, the town was named after her family.
Wow.
It was actually named after her dad, who was a prominent mill owner / judge. You know, back in the day when you used to be a mill owner and a judge at the same time.
Do you own any mills?
I've never owned a mill in my life.
Me neither.
I don't even know what a mill is.
I think it's a little factory for food.
Yeah.
But the factory makes it seem more grandiose, but like a small little guy.
Yeah.
Let's
I
go
think
with
you're
that.
right.
Yeah.
We definitely know history.
Yeah, wheat.
Yeah, wheat and rye. You mill things.
We're going to go with that.
We're going to go with that. So her birth came in the shadow of the Civil War.
Yeah.
Right? So she was born during a really tumultuous time for the country. The U.S. is still reeling from the conflict. And just for the context of women's roles at the time, because it's a big theme in the episode, women were real, even though they had helped a lot during the war, they were really confined to being a homemaker, being a mother.
Yeah.
There weren't really other options at the time. And her childhood nickname wasn't Nellie, wasn't Elizabeth. It was Pink.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so
is that like her favorite color?
Well, at the time, and you'll see this if you look at sort of like Civil War era movies, a lot of people's clothing is really neutral colors, right? Like a lot of grays, brown, beige, maybe some dark blues. Very common for the time. She was known for standing out because she wore lots of colors, lots of bright colors. She wore pink, which was not common at the time.
Nice.
And she got the nickname Pink.
That's so cool. I love that.
I thought that was a cute little anecdote about her. So, as we can imagine, higher education for women was rare. Careers outside of teaching or nursing, even rarer. Like being a woman and becoming a teacher or becoming a nurse was already like, wow, that's a lot. You're doing a lot there.
Yeah.
But to do anything else, like become a journalist, virtually unthinkable. Okay?
Wow. Okay.
Elizabeth was the 13th of 15 children. That's a lot of kids.
That's so many. 15? It just hit me. Oh my God, that poor woman.
Yeah. And they were in rural Pennsylvania when her father, Michael Cochran, even though he was wealthy and well respected because he's the mill owner / judge, he dies unexpectedly when Elizabeth, soon eventually Nellie, is only 6 years old.
Oh, so she never really got to know him.
Mm-hmm. And she didn't really ever get to grow up benefiting from his financial status or him being a well-respected figure in the community because they were left pretty much penniless when he died.
What? How does that even happen?
I don't know the details, but essentially the legal system at the time didn't offer protection for widows. So I think his money went to a male relative. It didn't go to his wife.
Oh, so like the mill is his asset and he doesn't even get to own it, or like his wife doesn't get to own it after his death?
Yeah, she lost it.
That's so crazy.
So the family is really, because his death was unexpected, they're just like plunged into financial hardship. And that a lot of biographers attribute to being like Nellie's first interaction with injustice in the system of like, oh, my mom can't have these things because she's an unmarried woman.
You know, I'm starting to notice a trope here. And it's about like kind of a wealthy individual growing up, but witnessing injustice and then devoting their life to like solving that injustice. Tiberius Gracchus is like a perfect kind of allegory for this.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's also the plot of the book Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse.
Oh, I've never read that. That's interesting.
Oh, it's really good. But yeah, that's a I'm sure there's plenty of weirdos in the good category of weirdos that have that upbringing.
Excellent. Yeah. Teddy Roosevelt.
Teddy Roosevelt, that's a good one.
Yeah.
We've never done an episode on him, even though you did Alice Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so back to Nellie's mom. So her mom, Mary Jane Kennedy Cochran, does get remarried because as a woman / single mom, she still got her little kids, she doesn't have options for income. There's nothing she can do. So she has to remarry.
Oh, wow. So some dude has to like be like, I'm going to take on your 15 kids.
Well, luckily, Nellie was 13 out of 15.
Okay, yeah.
So I think she just had the little ones left.
Okay.
Probably just had 13, 14, 15 more or less.
Like that's I still can't get over it. 15 births, like
That's too much.
that's way too many.
Yeah. My abue had 10.
That was too many.
Oh yeah, your grandparents didn't have a lot of kids, huh?
No.
My abue had 10 and my grandma had 5.
5's like a lot.
Yeah, that's already a lot.
Yeah.
And then abues grew up as one of 15. Remember?
Yeah. God.
I love how you're exhausted for them.
I'm just like, yeah.
You're like, how do you do it?
Yeah. Like I have no frame of reference too. I'm a man. Like I'm not going to ever give birth. Like,
And you're like, I can't imagine giving birth 15 times.
I can't even imagine giving birth once.
Well, yeah, I can't either, which sucks for me.
Yeah.
I feel you there, but I'm the one that's screwed. So
Yeah, I know.
let's move past it. So her mom has to remarry,
Okay.
and she marries this guy named John Jackson. Unfortunately, John Jackson is known for his heavy drinking, which could be fun, but it's not, because it's accompanied by a violent temper.
Oh, yeah, that's not fun. So he's not drinking to have a good time.
No, he was abusive. He was physically abusive to Mary Jane for sure.
Mm.
And then when Elizabeth is only 14 years old, she testifies in court against him to support her mother's petition for a divorce.
This poor woman.
14. And she has to share what she witnessed in the home because it was really uncommon to grant divorce at this time for something like domestic violence.
Wow.
Which you would think, of course, that's a great reason, but that was seen as kind of expected. So Elizabeth's testimony really helped her mom get that divorce. So she got free from the man.
I'm glad.
Mm-hmm. So despite all of this hardship and economic strain, she decides Elizabeth that she wants to better her life and she wants to go to school. So she attends the Indiana Normal School, dreaming of becoming a teacher.
Yes, and we now know what normal school is based
Yeah.
off of like weirdo testimony, but comments.
And your grandma.
And my grandma.
Listen to that episode where we're like, what's a normal school? What do you
Yeah.
do? And she's like, it's a teaching school.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So she goes to a normal school in Indiana, but after just one semester, she runs out of funds and she has to drop out, which is so sad. But don't worry. This is just even all of this hardship, losing her dad, having to help her mom get divorced, dropping out of school because she doesn't have money. It's only going to get better for her from here.
Good. I'm glad.
So let's get into her journalism career.
Oh, lovely.
So Nellie Bly's journalism career began very fittingly with an act of defiance. So in 1885, she's 21 years old, and young Elizabeth Jane Cochran read a column in the Pittsburgh Dispatch titled, "What Girls Are Good For." What do you think? What do you think it's going to say?
I think it would be very popular amongst the red pill community.
Yeah, it would be. The anonymous writer here calls himself, quote unquote, the quiet observer. That's how he authors the article.
Oh boy.
And he argues that a woman's place was in the home and only there. He even called working women of the time, like women who were being teachers and nurses, quote, a monstrosity.
Bro, there's so many bigger issues.
So many bigger issues,
especially that's really where you want to make your stand.
Especially in the United States at this time.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Unbelievable.
So Elizabeth reads this and she's pissed.
I feel like she's you.
Yeah. I could see that. And she channels that fiery rage into a very well written rebuttal. And she writes essentially a response to this man, and she signs it Lonely Orphan Girl. That's her pen name at the time.
That's cool.
The letter that she writes to the paper gets the attention of the editor, George Madden. And he's so impressed by the letter that he tracks her down because she didn't sign her name. He finds out who she actually is, and he invites her to the newsroom for an interview.
Wow. So that's also very forward thinking of this guy.
Mm-hmm.
like he's a true like capitalist in that like, oh, she can make us money.
Yes.
Like, I don't care.
Yes, exactly. So the interview changes the course of her life because he offers her a job as a columnist on a trial basis, right? Because they don't have any women on staff.
Right.
So he doesn't know how this is going to work. You know, is she going to get hysterical? Is she
That's
going to
true.
faint randomly? We don't know.
Yeah, you never know.
But she does adopt a pen name, Nellie Bly.
Nellie. Oh, so that's where she gets it.
That's where she gets it. She borrows the name from a popular song of the era written by Stephen Foster. I'm not familiar with the song.
I mean, I'm not too familiar with 19th century music, so.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We're both ignorant here. And it was common for female writers to use pen names or pseudonyms because it was deemed improper for them to be writers. So you wouldn't want to use your own name and have people target you or single you out.
Wow.
It's a bummer, right?
I mean, I'm just kind of like dumbfounded. Like, how do you have this much time? like there was so much poverty back then. Like, really,
so
is this
much
what you're
poverty.
worrying about?
There's so much poverty, and that's a great point because that's actually what Nellie cares about. And that's what she's going to write about.
Oh, so she's like a true weirdo in the best sense.
She knows what's up.
Yeah.
So her first published pieces focused on the harsh realities of working women in Pittsburgh, in the factory conditions, wage disparities, and just how poor people in the city were treated with such lack of human dignity. That's like her big mission, is to convey that. Her reporting really stood out in a male-dominated field because the male journalists weren't writing about these things. So she had a very unique perspective.
Not very class conscious of them.
Not very class conscious at all, but we're not surprised. It also, however, while it was popular, it stirred discomfort amongst her editors because controversial women aren't great for selling ads in your paper.
Oh my God, some things never change.
Some things never
change.
So they're afraid that the advertisers are going to get spooked, and they reassign her to what they call the women's pages of the paper, which were where you could write about fashion. You could write about flowers. Or you could write about social events. That's it. I don't know how much you could write about flowers for the newspaper, but apparently it's its own category.
I mean, I have nothing to add on that. That's just okay.
So they assign her to the women's pages. She gives it a shot, and she's not down. She doesn't like it. It's not interesting to her, but she's not undeterred. She decides to take matters into her own hands. In 1886, she convinced a different paper, the Dispatch, to send her to Mexico as a foreign correspondent.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
A rare assignment for journalists at the time, let alone a young woman.
Yeah, I'm really surprised they said yes, to be honest.
I am too.
And she's not Hispanic either, so...
No, she doesn't speak Spanish.
Yeah.
Has no ties to Mexico that we know of, but she goes.
I mean, honestly, like, I respect the hustle. Like, I would want to also go to Mexico.
Yeah, and you'll see why. So she goes, and yes, of course, she writes about the culture, the food, the entertainment, things like that there. But she also, being Nellie Bly, sneaks in pieces about the poverty and the politics for nearly 6 months. She immerses herself in everyday life, writing with empathy and curiosity, but she was a harsh critic of President Porfirio Diaz. He led an authoritarian regime.
Yes.
I think I mentioned him in a previous episode.
Yeah, the Adelitas, like, they rebel against his government. Maybe not him specifically, but that government.
Yes, exactly. So this is pre-Mexican social revolution. She's there and she's seeing the same injustices that the people are experiencing, and she's writing about it. So she gets threats for writing about this and sending that information back to the United States, and she has to leave because she's been threatened to be imprisoned.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Pretty badass,
Yeah,
though.
that is badass, yeah.
So she flees the country to avoid arrest, but she later publishes her findings in a book that she calls 6 Months in Mexico, and it does well. People really
Nice.
like her writing. And it's very clear at this point that she is not the type of journalist that wants to follow the rules.
That's right. She's a weirdo.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to get into her groundbreaking investigative work next. So now it's 1887. Nellie Bly's back in the U.S. And again, they're like, you need to write like about women's interests, flowers and dresses, which those are a lot of people's interests, but they're not their only interests. And she's like, no, I don't want to do that. So she decides to move to New York City, where she thinks there'll be more opportunities for her as a writer.
Moving to the big city, you see?
New York City. She spends 4 months unemployed, knocking on doors, asking for work.
And okay, her resume already is pretty impressive. Like being a foreign correspondent, like in your early 20s.
Yeah.
That's kind of wild.
I think it's crazy. Well, I guess it's because she's a young woman that they're not interested. But finally, she lands a meeting at the New York World, which is owned by Joseph Pulitzer.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about like a stroke of luck there.
Yeah. Well, they are known for their daring reporting.
Yeah, the Pulitzer Prize.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
exactly. So they're like, okay, we're interested, but we have a test for you. And she's like, bet. What is it? They want her to feign insanity and commit herself to Blackwell Island's insane asylum for women.
Oh, snap.
She doesn't hesitate. Immediately, she's like, perfect. I want to do that. Let's do it. Yeah. So they're surprised. So she checks into a boarding house. Her editors are there. They're helping her like prepare and rehearse her act. And then she has to go to this very notorious insane asylum. And she pretends that she is paranoid and is mentally ill. And doctors really quickly are like, yep, she's insane. And they just commit her without asking a lot of questions. She's under a fake name. They don't really check with like, who's your family? Where are you from?
Right.
Nothing. They're just like, okay, you're committed. And no one suspected she was faking. What followed were 10 harrowing days inside the asylum where she experienced firsthand the brutality inflicted on women who had been cast off by society.
Oh my God.
I'm going to read you a quote that she wrote while she was there. Quote, "The insane asylum on Blackwell's Island is a human rat trap. It is easy to get in, but once there, it's impossible to get out."
Ugh.
That's not a good thing to realize once you're already inside.
I know. Whenever we cover insane asylums, like on this show, it's never a good thing. It's always
so bad.
atrocious.
Atrocious. Yeah. For such awful reasons.
I know.
We think that if someone is mentally not well, that they are less worthy of care and attention.
Right, but it's like, if anything, they're more worthy.
You need
not
more.
more worthy, but they need more.
You need more care and attention.
It's like, that's the point. It's like, if you have cancer, you need cancer treatment. If you're sick in the head, you need that type of treatment.
Yes. Duh.
I know. It just seems so wild that like that isn't common knowledge, and it's frustrating.
Up until recently, yeah.
Up until very recently.
I mean, remember our old neighbor? Gosh, Ron. How'd you know I was talking about Ron?
I knew immediately.
Yeah, well, Ron went to the VA when I worked at the VA. Remember I ran into him there once?
Yes, I do remember, yeah.
He was telling me about how when he was younger, there were still the state hospitals everywhere, but they were shut down.
Shut down by Reagan.
Yeah.
In California, at least.
And that they weren't the best. Like that he was talking about how like more people need mental health care,
right,
especially for severe mental illness. But he's like, but then also how come when they get it, they're treated so badly?
Yeah, it's like, why don't we just treat them with like some semblance of dignity and respect? Wild, I know.
That'd be crazy. That'd be crazy. Well, I think this conversation really ties into why her work is so significant, because she really brings this conversation to light.
Oh, good.
So the metaphor that I just shared, where she calls it a human rat trap, becomes very famous. It illustrates how little power women had once they were deemed hysterical or inconvenient, right? So she's admitted as a patient. She sees that the patients are beaten. They are forced to bathe in freezing water. They are fed rotting food. They're left out in the cold, shivering, like no blankets, nothing. Some, in fact, weren't mentally ill at all. Some were just really, really poor.
They were just thrown in there because they're poor. Oh, my God.
Some were foreigners. They were immigrants who were just non-English speaking and got dumped there.
Oh, my God.
And some were just seen as inconvenient to their families, like a daughter you couldn't marry off. You would drop off there.
Is this like a state funded, or is it part of like some sort of religious institution, you think?
I think this would be definitely private, but I don't know if it had public funding as well.
Got it.
I actually don't know all the funding sources, but it's not called like a state hospital.
Mm-hmm.
It is called Blackwell's.
Okay.
So I assume there's at least partial private funding.
Yeah.
And no amount of begging, pleading, reasoning, showing that they are of sound mind would get them released. Once you're in, you're in. And Nellie's like, oh, snap.
Like, how am I going to get out of here?
I'm in here. What do I do? So on this cruelty, she did write, quote, I would like the expert physicians who are so ready to declare a sane woman insane to take a perfectly sound-minded and healthy woman, shut her up, and make her sit from 6 a.m. until 8 p.m. on straight back benches. Do not allow her to talk or move during these hours. Give her no reading and let her know nothing of the world or its doings. Give her bad food, harsh treatment, and see how long it will take to make her insane.
Yeah, so it's basically saying like, oh, this does the opposite of what it's supposed to be doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It highlights how the system is actively creating the mental illnesses via trauma that it's supposed to be curing. Sound familiar to any healthcare systems we've maybe interacted with?
I was literally thinking that. I was like, so some things really don't change.
Unfortunately, some things don't change. So it is tricky, but basically to get her out, her editors have to like bust in and be like, oh, like she's not, we planted her. Like they have to kind of like break her cover.
Right.
Because she can't get out. They thought like after a week she'd be able to just like check herself out, and she couldn't.
Right. I wonder how they're even communicating, if they're communicating at all.
I don't think they were communicating at all at this point, but I think after a week they went.
They were just like, oh, well,
to get her.
Yeah, it's taking too long.
Mm-hmm. So once she's out, when she gets discharged, she does publish her account, and it's called 10 Days in a Madhouse. The series was a sensation.
I can imagine.
The public was horrified. The medical establishment was embarrassed, and city officials were forced to respond and close down Blackwell's.
Oh, good.
Her undercover reporting led to a grand jury investigation. It increased funding for mental health care in the state of New York. It also proved that journalism could be a tool for systemic change.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, as a woman, that women could be part of that work, which is really cool.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
But she doesn't stop there. Over the next few years, she goes undercover again and again. She works in sweatshops to talk about labor abuses. She pretends to be an unwed mother seeking help. She goes undercover as a maid in some of like the most elegant, illustrious homes of like millionaires to write about how they're treated.
Mm-hmm.
She talks about unemployment conditions. She gets herself sent to jail so she could write about how women are treated in jail. She talks about employment agencies, corruption. Basically, her mission is to shine light on the cracks where the most vulnerable Americans were slipping through, which is really cool.
That's really dope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so even though she was known for this, I think no one was ever expecting her to be undercover.
Yeah.
Because female reporters were just so rare. You wouldn't expect to encounter someone doing this.
And so she could just get away with it time and time again.
Yep.
It's amazing.
Yeah, she really used it as like a weapon for good.
Nice.
It was her tool. And I wrote, she wasn't just reporting news. She was making history as a true weirdo.
She was.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of reminds me of that episode we did, another New York insane asylum where Geraldo Rivera broke in.
Yes.
That would be, I mean, that was like in the 70s. So that was like, what, like 90 years later?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Wow. Very similar spirit. You're right.
Yeah.
I wonder if he knew of Nellie Bly.
He must have.
Yeah. We should ask him. Okay. So she has another, like I said, quite a resume, but she has another really, really big moment in journalism that she's known for. And it's when she goes around the world in less than 80 days.
That's so cool. Because that was what Jules Verne?
Yeah. I'm going to talk about it.
Okay.
So in the late 19th century, I have to give some context. Women couldn't travel alone, pretty much. It just wasn't a thing. It was pretty unthinkable because most people didn't have money to travel. It was super expensive. So if you were upper middle class, upper class, you could travel as a woman, but you needed to have a male relative, a husband, a brother, a dad, whatever, or a companion, kind of like a chaperone.
I was going to say, yeah.
To protect your virtue, of course, because that's what's really needed here in the world. So female adventurers were rare. I don't know. I'm sure there were others at the time, but I don't really know of any off the top of my head. And if they did exist, they were never American. They were European, and they would be really, really, really wealthy, like royal wealthy.
Yeah.
And they could maybe travel alone, and it would still be seen as scandalous. Okay.
But they're so rich that it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. There was a lot of social risks. You could ruin your reputation, virtue. There was physical risk because you could get hurt. The world is dangerous, and women were unprotected. And let me see here. Yeah, even if you did travel with a chaperone, it could still be seen as scandalous, kind of like depending on the circumstances of your travel.
Right.
But do you think Nellie Bly cares about scandal?
She doesn't care about that.
Yeah, she doesn't do what's expected of her. So she gets an idea.
Ooh.
She's reading a book that came out in 1873 by French science fiction author Jules Verne, just as you mentioned, called Around the World in 80 Days.
Yes.
This is a wildly popular adventure story about a wealthy Englishman named Phileas Fogg. Isn't that so cute?
Yes.
Phileas Fogg. One of the weirdos commented on our Instagram recently, I'm going to keep a list of all the cat names Stephanie wants. I think Phileas Fogg should go on that list.
Yeah. Add it.
Add it. That would be a good cat name. So Phileas Fogg accepts a wager to circumnavigate the globe in 80 days.
Yes, I've seen the movie.
Oh, I haven't.
Yeah, I think there was a movie that came out about 20 years ago.
Is it good?
Yeah, it's cute. It's
Okay,
good.
I want to watch it.
Yeah.
Well, the book is a huge sensation. It really captures the present day imagination because there's steamships, there's trains, there's telegraphs, like all the cutting edge things that made the world start to shrink for people. It started to get smaller. And it was an international bestseller, translated into dozens of languages. It inspires plays, games. It's even like a dinner party game, apparently, at the time. But it is fiction, like I said. And then Nellie was like, what if I make it real? Which I love. So, at this point, 1889, she is a well-known reporter for the New York World. But she wants a new challenge. She wants to do something daring. She wants to silence all the critics of women in journalism. As you can imagine, she gets a lot of hate letters.
Oh, I'm sure.
And she has this idea that she's going to retrace the fictional route in this book and that it'll be super fun.
That's so dope.
Her editors are like, hell no,
Yeah,
girl.
they're like, girl, you're going to get killed.
What are you talking about? We can't do that. They're like, okay, we love the idea, but we're going to have to put a man on the assignment. And her response was basically, cool, send a man. Let me know what day he's going out. I'm going to leave on the same day, and I'm going to beat him. And they're like, oh, okay, we'll send you. They're not excited about it, but they agree. So on November 14th, 1889, Nellie Bly set sail from Hoboken, New Jersey.
Guys, Stephanie, when she first heard the word Hoboken, she didn't believe that was a real place.
I didn't think Hoboken, New Jersey was real.
No. She
It's
thought
very real.
her aunt was messing with her and be like, okay, I'll meet you in Hoboken.
Yeah, I was in New York and my aunt Karen, hi Aunt Karen, wanted to meet me in Hoboken. And I thought she was being silly. And then I was like, wait, where are we actually meeting? Because Hoboken's real. Apparently it's been real for a long time.
I know. Imagine the weirdos that are in Hoboken right now. They're like, are you kidding me?
What? So she leaves from Hoboken. She only has a small travel bag and the clothes on her back. No trunk, which everyone traveled with like those old timey trunks at the time.
I love those.
No companion. She refuses to have anyone come with her. She's like, I just need my notebook. I need a few change of clothes. And I'm going to make like a secret pocket in my dress to put like extra cash in case I get mugged.
Is she strapped?
No, I don't think she's strapped on this trip.
She should be.
Yeah, she should. Maybe she was and she didn't want to tell people.
Yeah, that's true. That would be really scandalous. Right?
Yeah. So her itinerary would take her from New Jersey to England, to France, to Italy, Egypt, Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka, Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, and finally back across the Pacific
To
California, I imagine.
California. But then she has to go across the country.
To New Jersey.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Her journey captivates the public. She sends out dispatches as she like gets to a new place. She kind of like sends updates back to her editors and they publish it. And it was a sensation. People even like had maps and they would track where she was. There were bets all over as to like when she'd get where.
Oh, yeah.
Like it became kind of like the thing that people gathered around. It was like, oh, where do you think Nellie Bly is? When do you think Nellie Bly is going to get to Egypt?
She like inserted herself into like pop culture.
Absolutely. Really great way of saying it. She was like how we all watch like The Last of Us or The House of the Dragons on Sunday.
Yeah.
Like people were talking about Nellie Bly and her trip around the world.
In less than 80 days.
So jealous.
I know. Should we do that?
Yeah, we should.
Oh, but like it would be so easy to do it in less than 80 days. Maybe without planes. Like we could only do like cars, trains, ships.
That'd be interesting.
No planes.
Like if we tried to recreate her journey
Yeah.
and like the technology available to her.
Yeah, more or less.
Interesting. Would we use maps instead of like Google Maps?
No, we'd still use Google Maps 100%. Okay, not everything has to be the same.
Could we wear like the old timey clothes?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm down.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Weirdos fund this for us.
Donate, please.
Or you know, we corporate sponsors. If anyone's listening, please sponsor this trip.
Don't listen to anything we say about corporations. We love them.
We love them.
We love them. Okay, so while on her trip, she's in France. She stops to visit Jules Verne.
Oh, dude, that's actually sick.
Because he heard about it and he was like, I want to meet her. Isn't that so cool?
That's iconic.
So Jules Verne wanted to meet her. He was so excited. Apparently, the second he sees her, like there were press there. Like everyone was like waiting.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, quote, if you do it in 79 days, I'll applaud with both hands. Right? So he was like, I bet you could do it in one day less.
Yeah.
In the end, she didn't need the extra 7. She returns on January 25th, 1890, having completed the journey in 72 days, 6 hours, and 11 minutes.
That's so wild.
Mm-hmm. She beat the fictional record, and she beat all the critics who said she wouldn't even finish the trip.
Oh, I bet they were pissed.
Yes. Crowds greeted her in New Jersey at the train station like she was royalty.
Wow.
It was really, really cool. She had proven not only that the journey was possible, but that a woman could do it and that a woman could do it alone.
I mean, I'm really impressed that she did that alone as a woman in the late 19th century.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a little bit easier now. Still
Right.
dangerous,
Yeah.
right? Especially in some areas, we're gonna run into some issues.
I know.
But the fact that she did it back then, when there weren't cell phones, there weren't any sort of like technology that we are reliant on today.
She couldn't like use Google Translate. She couldn't like
Right.
drop her location to her editors to be like, just keep track of me where I am.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
She's not live tweeting.
she didn't do like an IG live when she got
Oh
to
my
Jules Verne's
God.
house.
That
Would be amazing.
Maybe we need to go to Jules Verne's house. We
Yeah.
need to meet him.
I don't think he's there anymore. I think he's busy.
He's busy being dead.
So she takes all of the dispatches and all of her journal entries from the trip and she puts it into a book called Around the World in 72 Days, which you can still get. I got it on my Kindle.
Nice.
I got Around the World in 72 Days and 10 Days in the Madhouse. She's a good writer. Like, it's accessible even to today's audiences.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. So she becomes, of course, a commercial success. This really cemented her as an icon in journalism. She even became kind of like an international celebrity at this point.
Oh, snap.
This really was a declaration that the modern woman was no longer confined to the home and she could claim the entire world, which I love.
That is really cool.
Mm-hmm. And then after this, there's a big shift in her life.
Oh, okay.
Pretty surprising shift. We're going to get into it. So in 1895, she's at the height of her fame. She's very well known. She's still writing.
So she's like in her early 30s at this point. She's like
very young.
31.
She's
She's
like-
done all this.
Yeah, she's younger than we are.
It's like my Alexander moment.
My Nellie Bly moment.
Yeah.
She makes a surprising move. She gets married.
Okay. Either this is a huge mistake or this dude is like a homie.
He is a multi-millionaire industrialist.
Okay, there we go, girl. That's
His name is Robert Seaman, and he's a businessman who's 40 years older than her.
Oh, so okay, I see what you're doing, girl. I
So-
see what you're doing here.
I wrote, our girl isn't just brave and badass, she was smart.
I know we married each other and we're poor. It's
I
like
know. Not as smart.
not as smart.
Pretty cool, but not as smart. Yeah, she was like known for not wanting to get married, and then all of a sudden she meets this guy and she's like, oh yeah, I'm down. I've always wanted to be married. That's my dream.
Oh my god, it's
I love her for it.
I mean, yeah. You got to do what you got to do.
You gotta do what you gotta do. So he owned an ironclad manufacturing company which produced steel containers,
Oh, see, it's like a boring business.
milk cans,
Yeah.
other industrial goods. And after years of breaking barriers as a journalist, she shifted into her new role as wife.
Okay.
And then her husband, because he's so much older than her, he dies in 1904. And she, unlike her mom, gets to inherit everything.
Oh, so she's like, I mean, she went from like being like wealthy or like we're kind of rich to like wealthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She becomes president of the company and she approaches the business with innovation and empathy. She implements a lot of progressive employee benefits programs, which at the
Oh.
time, that's not what businesses were about.
No. This is even before Henry Ford. That's
Yeah.
impressive.
People were very, very exploitive of workers, but I think because of all the work she had done in factories and employment offices, and she had a lot of empathy. So she gives her employees health care.
Oh, wow.
She gives them access to a gym, which I think is so cool.
I would love to see what a gym looked like at this time.
Oh my God. So funny.
What are they guys?
The mustaches. Look,
Guys.
do you think they wore the little stripy suits? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about. They might have.
Little stripy onesies?
They definitely didn't have like squat racks or anything.
No. But they had stripy suits and mustaches, so it could be better. And this was just remarkable for the time. No one was doing this. She also pushed for more modern manufacturing processes, and she made the move to hold several patents.
Smart.
One was for stackable steel barrels.
See, like you think, oh, who cares? This is boring. That's exactly the point. You're not going to have competition if you have a boring business.
Mm-hmm.
So you own this business and it's like you just kind of apply a little bit of passion to it.
Yeah.
Your competitors are probably super old, just like they're just running through the
Fuddy-duddies.
motions. They're
Mhm.
fuddy-duddies. but a teeny bit of like some new technology, you're going to be the front runner. Also, you're not going to get new entrants because it's boring business.
I think her age and her experiences as a journalist really positioned her well to be an innovator in the industry. However, there is a downturn here. So she goes on a trip abroad, kind of like an extended trip. She's a wealthy lady. She could do what she wants.
Yeah.
And her trusted employee, the guy who was running the business in her stead, embezzled large sums of money, and he pushed the company into financial ruin.
What is up with these types of people that just like they allow their greed to just run rampant, and it ruins things?
She was alerted to the situation too late. She did try to save it, but the company called Ironclad eventually went bankrupt, and she lost most of her fortune.
Oh my God, I'd be so pissed at this guy.
She trusted the wrong person. So sad. But you know why we love Nellie Bly?
She said, whatever.
Literally. She's like, well, I'm going to go back to journalism. She just goes back to journalism. She doesn't skip a beat.
She's like, I mean, I guess that is like, you know, the past is the past. Like, you can't change it. You can only just learn from it and be like, okay, what do I do now? Let's move forward.
Very stoic of her. It also seems like even though she was extremely wealthy during this time, I get the sense she didn't get too attached to it, because she does transition well back into like being a normal person. So she's returning to journalism, and now it's the 1910s.
Okay.
During World War I, she became one of the first female correspondents to report from Europe.
Oh my goodness, that's right.
She reported from Austria and Serbia.
So she's like in her early 50s at this point. Wow. So she's had an illustrious career.
Yes. So she writes vivid firsthand accounts of the war's toll on civilians.
Yeah.
And like the foot soldiers. Like, she's still a woman of the people, you know, and that's who she writes about in this. She also focuses on the women's suffrage movement. She covers a lot of like the parades, the protests, the struggle for voting rights in general. And in the women's suffrage becomes like a huge part of the last bit of her career. And I do want to address that in her work, she does focus on like the white women's suffrage movement, because there were suffragettes of different backgrounds. Black women, Native women were also part of the movement, but they were often not highlighted intentionally. And none of Nellie's writing has that sort of intersectional framework. She's really only focused on this one group. So it is a drawback of her work.
I guess we can't be perfect.
Yeah. I want us to remember that the 19th Amendment that came about in 1920 was a victory for many, but not for all, because full voting rights for Black, Native, Latina, Asian American women is delayed for decades.
Right. Until like probably the civil rights or.
Yes, exactly. So her like reporting is limited, and it was just surprising to me because of how much she demonstrates such profound empathy for people who have life experiences that she doesn't. It did seem like a weird blind spot to me, but a blind spot it is nonetheless. So after a lifetime of pushing boundaries from the asylum to the battlefields of World War I,
that's quite a giant like expanse.
She passes away January 27th, 1922 in New York City. She is young. She's only 57 years old, and she died of pneumonia, which was common at the time, and it was common for it to be fatal because they didn't have antibiotics.
Yeah.
So her death was noted in newspapers nationwide, including the New York Times, and in the Times they describe her as, quote, a remarkable woman whose courage and curiosity had taken her farther than most men of her era.
I mean, yeah.
Which I think she would have loved. She would have been like, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
She's laid to rest at Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx. It's actually a cemetery that houses a lot of prominent historical figures. Her grave, though, for decades is left unmarked.
Was that by her choice?
I don't know. But I guess the people, like just random people, were like, wait, we want to know where she's buried. And the records are identified, and now her grave is marked. And it's a tribute site for journalists, feminists, just admirers will go and like lay flowers at her grave now.
So any weirdos in New York, if you
Go
are
to
in
Woodlawn,
the Bronx, and you go to the Woodlawn Cemetery, just like lay some flowers at her grave. Take
Say
a picture
what's
to
up.
it, send it to us. We'll post.
Yeah, and my dad would also say, go to a Yankees game.
Oh my God, that is so your dad. Preferably a Yankees-Dodgers game where the Dodgers win.
Oh,
Okay,
I don't think that's what he would say.
No, that wouldn't be.
So today, Nellie Bly is widely seen as the founder of investigative journalism.
Boom.
Going
Look
back
at that.
to your comment from the very beginning.
I was like, wow, she's like an independent investigative journalist. That's so cool.
Mm-hmm. She's a reporter who didn't just write about injustice. She wanted to enter the story and experience it as much as she could for herself. Her work at the New York World, especially 10 Days in a Madhouse, pioneered first-person undercover reporting.
Nice.
Though Nellie Bly never formally joined feminist groups, her life really was seen as sort of like a feminist act, right? She really championed that women could do whatever they wanted to do.
Right.
She didn't have like an ideology or like a political party or political background. She was just like, people should be able to do what they want.
Yeah.
She also really obviously fought for mental health reform, labor rights, legal justice, and again, later used her platform that she had developed in her 50s for the women's suffrage movement. And even as an industrialist, she was ahead of her time. She was very progressive. You know, healthcare. Who would have thought that would mean a lot to people? Mm-hmm.
That's so wild.
Nellie Bly's fearless approach to storytelling paved the way for generations of investigative journalists, especially women determined to make their mark in a field that once excluded them. And then today we see Bly has become a recurring figure in pop culture. She's been portrayed in plays, films, TV shows, including an episode of Drunk History and an appearance as a time-traveling character in the show Timeless.
Oh, wow.
Which I'm not familiar with, but
I've heard of that show. I think it's like an older one, and it looks interesting. I would give it a shot.
Yeah, I would want to watch it too. I have heard references to it before. And then in 2019, there's a drama series about her called The Nellie Bly Story, which is starring Christina Ricci.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
I'm like just now vaguely remembering like posters for it. Because I could see Christina Ricci in like the garb.
Yeah.
But I never watched the show.
I never did either.
I would like to check it out.
I had no idea we would be doing an episode on that very subject. So.
I know. And I guess the Nellie Bly story focuses on her asylum exposé.
Oh, okay.
So that would be really cool to watch. And then in 2021, she's honored with a public monument on Roosevelt Island in New York called the Girl Puzzle. And she was even a Google Doodle.
Oh, that's how you know you made it.
Right? That's how you know you made it. From classrooms to comic books, she's still quite a symbol of being an unapologetic weirdo in history.
Nice. I like her.
And that's the story of Nellie Bly.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing. You know, it's interesting. Her story as an industrialist actually reminded me of Henry Ford, being a little bit of like a trailblazer with wanting to make the lives of his workers better. Like, for example, he introduced and not because of him, but some people who he went up against are the reason why like corporations are so evil today. He wanted to give profits to employees.
That's right.
And Dodge Corporation, which still exists to this day, was like, no, it needs to go to shareholders only.
Yes, you're right.
And that has irrevocably, thank you. Irrevocably, like just damaged like U.S. worker relations.
The world, like our country would look really different if that was the precedent.
Yeah.
How interesting.
And I feel like she would have been supportive of that. She probably would have done something similar.
Yeah, you're right. She was a pleasure to research. Like I said earlier, we can put the sources in the show notes because there's lots of articles and biographies about her. But I also recommend checking out her work because I did cite 10 Days in the Madhouse and Around the World in 72 Days.
Nice. Okay.
So I recommend checking it out, weirdos.
Yeah, weirdos, check it out. Read it. Let us know if you liked it.
Yeah, let us know what your thoughts are, questions, comments. On Spotify, you can leave comments on the episode. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or elsewhere, leave them on Instagram.
Yeah, exactly. Also, you can watch the full length video on YouTube. In fact, I think today we just crossed 1,000 subscribers on the
YouTube,
channel. Yeah, which is something so
Yay.
cool.
Small wins.
So thank you guys for that.
Yeah, just put us on in the background. A lot of the times you'll see, our apartment's really messy. But today you actually get a nice view, so you're welcome.
It's so true, though.
Yeah. So until next time, weirdos.
Until next time, weirdos. Adios.